my name is Kelly Martin. I'm a traditional and independently published author of more than 30 books, and welcome to my channel. This is video 3 in the How to Write Horror series. Hello, I hope you've enjoyed this series so far. I hope you've learned something. As I've said in all these videos, I'm not an expert. And even if I hit #1 on USA Today or New York Times 500 times, I personally would still not feel like an expert in writing. That's just me. I think I can always learn and I can always grow, so I'm not pretending or acting like I'm an expert. These are just some things that I've learned and I wanted to share them with you. Now, the reason this whole series got started actually is Priscilla commented on one of my videos about how to get people to keep reading through the slow parts in horror. And I was like, oh, that's a great question. Oh, I should make a series over this. So, that's what we got. Thank you, Priscilla. Okay, so we're going to get right into this. Okay, you need slow parts in horror. You just do. It's kind of like you need a few laughs and a few slower parts, like on the roller coaster. You need a little bit of time to catch your breath, because if you keep their intensity up and their heart rate up, they're either going to get exhausted and not want to read anymore, or get frustrated and not going to read anymore. Or if you just keep having big thing happen, it's not going to be as impactful. If you have the rise and falls, then the big parts are going to be impactful because you've calmed them down. You've gave them a minute to breathe. The most important part is to make the rise right before somebody expects it. Okay, what am I talking about? In the movie It, the new one, I guess it was last year it came out, and I had seen the previews, and I had seen the scene. And this is a spoiler for It, if you've never seen it, like I did for Supernatural, I'll put like a big It somewhere, and when that goes away, you can come back to watch if you don't want to have any spoilers for It. But this scene was the scene that they had showed in every trailer. They had showed it on every TV show. They had showed, it's the clip they had on YouTube. It was just the clip. It was the clip they had. And it was the scene where the kids were sitting in Bill's garage and they were watching the film, the picture on the projector. And it was going through. And of course, it was his mama, and then the wind was blowing and blew his hair back, and then there was Pennywise standing there. And I remember I was sitting there thinking, I went to watch it in a movie theater with my sister, and I was sitting there, and you know, the tension had been built through this whole movie. Of course, rise and fall, rise and fall. So during this part of the movie, I thought, I've already seen this part. I have seen it, and I kind of relaxed. And I was like, why did they show the entirety of the best scene on YouTube? Why did they I mean, it was like the official thing. It wasn't just like somebody had filmed it. It was the official video. It's like, why did they show the best scene like that? Like, it's not even impactful anymore. I know what's going to come. So I was sitting there and I relaxed. And the best thing you can do when you write horror or make horror is to make the person, the reader or the viewer, relax. Because when they relax and you jump scare the fire out of them, they're going to jump out of their seat. So when Pennywise jumped out of that screen, I screamed. And he just kept, like, it just kept happening. And I like nearly jumped over my sister. Now some of you are like, how can you write horror if that scared you? It scared me because I wasn't expecting it. I thought the scene ended when he was in the projector and the kids screamed. I thought that's how the scene ended. That is not how the scene ends. And that is what made it so impactful. The scene itself was slow, but it made me relax and because it made me relax, the jump scare hit harder. And that's the point I'm trying to make in this. I'll take the it spoiler down. That's the point I'm trying to make. The slow parts in horror books are to give the readers a rest, and you use it to build up the tension to the jump scares. You keep the reader interested and engaged through the story. Don't make it an info dump. But the more you calm them down, keep the world tilted just a little, and then hit them with the jump scare impact, it makes it that much better and that much more actually enjoyable. It was my favorite part of the movie, and it scared the daylights out of me because I wasn't expecting it. That's kind of how you want your horror books to be. Make it their favorite part that they don't expect. Okay, so what are 3 ways you can do that? What are 3 things you can do to make your calm, your slow parts more agreeable, more page turning for your reader? Okay, the first thing you can do is remember the hum that you hear and the tilt that you see in your book world. It might not make any sense to you, but it makes sense to me. Now, remembering the hum part, you're still having your characters and you're still having your story develop. You're not having just a scene of drinking tea just to have a scene to drink tea just to break up 2 big moments. Don't have your slow scenes just to be like breaking up scenes. Like, they need to have a point. Everything in your book needs to have a reason to happen, and these slow scenes have reasons, and not just to calm your reader down. And the way to get through, a good way to get through them, is there's always going to be this character, and it could be more than one character, but they usually seem to know more than they have to know or than everybody else knows. And what I do is during those slow parts, you can have them like say normal things, but put in one word to kind of tilt it, to make the reader catch it and go kind of back. And it puts doubt and questions in the reader's mind, and it keeps you interested as you go through. And anytime there's a mystery, most of the time people want to solve it and they want to catch the clues. So in the slow parts, that's a great time to add in subtle context foreshadowing clues that keep the reader going and calm them down a little bit, but keep their interest. Number 2, in the slow parts, ease the readers down. We've talked about calming them down. What I like to do, and I'll say it now, and then I don't have to move my beats because everybody will be like, well, we know when she's going to scare us now. What I like to do is the beat before you expect something to happen. That's when I like to have things happen. That's the perfect time to have like a cat jump in, or all the cliche things that you're like, I'm not going to put that book, it's cliche. It is cliche. And if you put in more than one cat jumping in a book, that's just too much. Or a door, whatever. If you have characters and they're drinking their tea and you have your calm and your readers are calm, and then something gets knocked over and there's a crash, and then that kind of gets the jump scares back up again, and that kind of gets the heart pumping again and kind of gets a scare, which is cliche. But you can make it not cliche by making that part of the story. Maybe nothing knocked it over. Maybe there's a reason it knocked over. Maybe that adds to your story. Maybe that adds to your mystery. So that's another way. And then, of course, that's going to make the people in the room tense and scream and maybe laugh. And then laughter brings your anxiety down. And then that calms the people in the room down, which calms the readers down, which in turn makes a perfect time for another jump scare. Okay, the number 3 thing you can do during the slow parts of your book or your slower scenes is to have a character do something that's not in character. Or use imagery or use the scene around you to kind of add to the tilt of the house or the tilt of the story or the hum in the story. What basically subtle changes in either the characters or the story, or maybe you have a character that's possessed but the reader doesn't know they're possessed yet, really, but have the character do something slightly different than normal. Have their eyes shift, have their eyes black, have their, I don't know, their posture change, have, like, put it earlier in the book that they keep their hands in their pockets because of some reason, and then have them standing with their arms crossed because they wouldn't do that. Have some very, very subtle thing to keep your story going, but don't call out that there's something that just puts in the back of the reader's mind that something's up. And then when they, at the very end, when they figure it out, they'll go back and find all the foreshadowing you did before and be like, oh, I should have figured it out sooner. Or if they do figure it out, they can be like, good, I figured it out. And then they feel super duper smart, which they are because they figured out your book. Okay, here are some suggestions, some concrete, practical suggestions to keep the tension in your slow scenes. The first thing that you can do is you can mention that all the doors in the hall are closed. Then a few scenes later during your slow scene, one or two of them are open. That's one thing that adds something's wrong, something's weird, and it can be a throwaway line. I think the best things in horror especially are the throwaway lines, the lines that don't really mean anything, but they mean the most. Like in a book that I wrote, the throwaway line is the bathroom door will never stay shut. It can be like she'll go up the stairs and the door's shut, or she'll go shut the door. She'll go back down the stairs, come back upstairs, the door's open. That's kind of the tension thing. It's the subtle change that I was talking about. You can have a character jump into frame. You can have a character be walking one way and turn around and there's somebody standing there. That can up the tension. I know, cliche, but sometimes cliches are good. Don't have a whole book of cliches, but cliches are cliches for a reason because a lot of times they work. But please don't put 50 or 100 in your book. 1 or 2 is fine. 1 or 2 is fine. Make sure to set up foreshadowing for the end. Drop it throughout your book, but make it very, very, very subtle. The book series I'm working on right now, the foreshadowing is so subtle. I'm hoping people pick up on it because I feel pretty smart for figuring it out. You can also have a character trait that adds to the tension. Like you can have, a lot of my characters have anxiety. I have anxiety, so I think I kind of write through my anxiety through them. You can, in Trinity Row, she fell through the floor. Her and John fell through the floor, and Ivy, my main character, she starts to have a panic attack under the porch, and that kind of added tension to a basically calm scene, a slow scene, and that kind of gives the reader the tension. If you have anxiety, that's probably not a good thing for the reader, but sometimes that does help to add little care. It doesn't have to be anxiety. It could be tics, like twirling your hair, or little things that can, you know your characters. Something that your character can do to add tension, but not too much tension. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm not making sense. I hope I'm making sense. You can also have a character see something out of the corner of their eye and, talk themselves out of it. Oh, it's just a shadow. I just saw something. I heard humming. It's the TV. It's the cat. It's the whatever. You can add that into places. You can also add mirrors because mirrors are creepy. You can also, if you need a slower scene, add a bathroom scene, because people, when they're taking a bath or a shower, there's a reason Psycho works so well, because that's when they're vulnerable. And anytime people are vulnerable, it adds tension and it adds an undercurrent of, oh gosh, what's gonna happen. So any scene that you can think of in a restroom or a washroom to make the character breathe but still keep the tension up, washing their faces, washing their hands, looking in that mirror. I hate mirrors. That will keep the tension through your slow scenes. Or if you have a character and your slow scene happens to be with a group of people, you can have your character see a reflection or, anything like that. So what else can you think of? What other ways can you think to make slow scenes carry tension? The point I want to make, the main idea I want to get through, is your slow scenes don't need to feel slow. They're there for a reason. Like I said, don't just put them in because you have this big scene here and this big scene here and you need a filler. Don't make any scene filler, especially in horror, because if you have a filler scene, you will lose your tension and everything will go wrong. People will quit reading because you've got to have that shift, that tilt, and you have to have that hum, and you have to have the kind of the mystery involved to keep people want to turn the pages. So make sure that you give your readers a false sense of calm, and you need to foreshadow the bigger events in the slower parts. Make sure every scene has a purpose, every scene is leading toward the end, and no scene is filler. Slow parts in books are very important. They are immensely important in horror because, like I said, you have to drop the readers down. You have to make them calm for that big thing to hit. It is what it is. Use your slower parts. You can add in your foreshadowing. You can add in story elements and kind of pepper them through. Of course, you can do it in the big parts too. Definitely do them in the big major scenes too. But to keep the tension, to keep people reading through the slow parts, pepper in foreshadowing, pepper in subtle things, pepper in small jump scares, like cats jumping or the wind blowing or, little things. The thing to remember is, as always, keep your reader guessing, keep them engaged, don't bore them, even through the slow parts, and make sure that you don't think of any scene as filler, because no scene is ever filler. I've been reading It by Stephen King, and I won't get into any of the spoilers, but I will say it's a huge book. Basically, what I found out is, I've not read like 100 pages of it. Basically, what I found out is he has these huge scenes, like 10-page scenes. And the only thing you have to get out of it, like the main idea, is at the very end of that scene. Like that's the main reason he wrote that entire thing, was for the very end. So, make sure that's what you do. You have these scenes. You don't have to write a 1,000-page book, something I'm saying. What I'm saying is, every scene has a reason to be there. Every scene adds just a little bit to the foreshadowing. Every scene, make sure you build up your characters at the beginning so the reader will know the certain ticks at the end. Maybe your character's like me and keeps flopping her fingers through her hair. And then, like the middle of the book, her hair's down and she stops and she doesn't touch her hair. Well, the reader's going to know something's up. Something's wrong. And that leads to different types of tension. And that leads to foreshadowing for future events. So, I'm going to go. I'm going to leave that here. In the comments, tell me what you think are great ways to keep the tension in slower scenes. What are some of the best ways you've seen? What books do you see that are the best, that you love, that is like a slow build? Now, some books do have the slow build and they don't even have like a jump scare scary thing till the very end. That's fine too. Their whole book is a slow scene. So you can do that too, however you feel comfortable doing it. But just make sure, like I said, keep things subtle. Make sure your characters are well developed and your house is well developed enough so your reader knows, hey, something's off. If you like this video, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel. If it's anything that you... please subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the notification bell if you want to be notified when I make new videos. There's one more video in this series, and that is how to end your horror book, and I hope you come back and watch it. I will see you in the next video. Bye!